at 2:00 and of the Strategic Housing Finance Corporation. Debbie, would you please call roll? Hello?
Hold on one second. Let me see where she is.
Debbie, you're muted.
Got this meeting is being recorded in front of my screen. How do I get that off?
No, we were recording the meeting.
Just click OK.
I-
You click OK.
Okay. All right, got it. Thank you. Okay. All right, Debbie?
I think she may be having issues with her audio. I hear her talking down the hall, but
Okay. I will, oh, she's
Why
here. She's here. We have it. We have it.
Okay,
President Wilma Roberts,
here?
Vice President Ann Denton,
Here.
Director John Hernandez,
Here.
Director Eddie Karam,
here.
Director Robbie Meyer.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, first item on the agenda, is there any citizens communication?
No, sir.
Mr. Howard?
No one has signed up.
Okay, then, item 2 is the action item, which is resolution number SHFC, what is that, 2021-10? Approves Rosemont at Oak Valley Residential Relocation Action Plan. Okay, you want to present the action plan, Mr. Howard, or who's doing that?
I will be doing that. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So subsequent to you all's meeting on Tuesday, I did speak before the Commissioners Court, Travis County Commissioners Court. They did pledge their financial support and associated staff support to assist with relocation efforts related to Rosemont and Oak Valley. We did have, and so there's been a slew of meetings since that time. We also, as you all are aware, had the meeting on the community meeting, town hall meeting on Wednesday evening, whereby we shared with the residents at least the pledge of support, but Travis County updated them on some of what we've been able to establish to date in terms of a plan for relocation, which is what I've identified in this relocation plan, relocation action plan, which I will share with you all now. Apologize. So I'm going to stop sharing this and then open up the plan. Okay, hold on a second. All right, sorry, I had the wrong date.
Patrick, was
Yes,
that,
ma'am.
was that plan sent out before now?
Yes, it was. It was set up, it was sent out as a part of the board meeting. I just finished it about 3 hours ago because we were still working on details, but that was sent out about earlier today.
Okay, because I don't remember seeing, oh, okay.
It should have been in part of the agenda update. Oh, actually, we sent out Debbie sent out an email actually, as opposed to updating the agenda. So it was actually part of that.
So it came out earlier today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, this is a work in progress. Okay, so I'm gonna just, can everyone see the screen? This is, you got an email, but I'm gonna just go straight to what the proposed action plan, and then, you know, there's some details that staff will share as a specific part of some of the actions that we've outlined here. So the action 1 would be that we would work with Travis County to devise a plan to safely but expeditiously relocate those impacted residents of Rosemont and Oak Valley, which obviously is obviously stated. We will work with financial assistance committed by Travis County. We will work to relocate residents, which would include at this point lodging, and I can give you details on all of these things, on lodging, the storage of their personal items and the like. Third would be to reimburse the property management, reimburse residents who are impacted for the month of July. That was something that re-impact those residents. There are several residents that actually already see rent concessions for July. So we haven't assessed specifically the impact in terms of that amount. However, that would be part of the plan. Fourthly, and this is something still to be determined in terms of what that looks like or the impact of such. There are those that express some interest in, obviously, based on the identified location, which I'll share here in a little bit, for relocation, that the ability to come back to the site for those that want to continue to attend school if they're impacted by such, to be able to catch the bus essentially from the site to school. Fifthly, this is something we as staff talked about, is we ideally still want to continue to move forward with the work. It's been slowed up obviously as a result of this process, but we want to incentivize residents to allow us to continue that work that had started by giving them incentives to do such by providing them gift cards so that we can continue to do that work. This was something to be voluntary. We believe that we have about 15 units specifically that we are interested in getting immediate access to in order to move forward with the work. And that's what that speaks to. And then, as you know, we actually have work that's ongoing that we don't want there to be any disruption with the work. And so obviously there's some outstanding balances that we want to address. And we have some ideas about how we move forward with that without there being disruption. I'm going to let staff provide that information as well to you all. So I was thinking we could go and take each one at a time. And if there's questions about the thought process or the rationale behind each, we could talk about those. Again, we have some details that we need to provide in each case or can provide, but that this is the plan that we're recommending going forward.
Okay. Okay, any questions or concerns or input at this point? Okay, Patrick, if you don't, we don't seem to have any. If you would go ahead with item one and get staff input or get clarity. You know, I think if there's questions, they should address. Would
it be easier to just whichever is easiest to do. So action plan, step one or action one. It seems clear that we need to relocate the residents, and so I've been in discussions with Travis County. Obviously, again, they've pledged their financial support. We've identified locations for temporary housing. The majority of the residents actually want to return, but do not have a place to locate temporarily. They don't want to sign leases for any period of time. And the majority of folks, not in every case, but a majority of them would like to return. So we've identified 2 extended stays in the general vicinity within 3 miles of the property. They've given us some rough numbers in terms of pricing. I'll share that information with Travis County. They seem generally on board with that process. They will be meeting this afternoon and on Monday and on Tuesday to give us some indication of whether there is what may be the source of funds, but we are working out some details. But we have identified 2 extended stays that have full kitchens, which was one of the request made, obviously, given the time frame that folks are going to be potentially out of their units. And so that work is ongoing, but we have identified 2 locations that can accommodate all 87, if in fact 87. I think that number is likely to go down given some new information we have. But that's what action step 1 relates to. I can give as much detail as you guys want on that.
Patrick, what is the new information that you have that is going to make that 87 go down?
Sure. Well, there's multiple things, but specifically in one case, apparently 10 of the units approximately we have not had access to. So we've actually not done testing on those units. This is kind of new information to us as of probably yesterday. So we are speculating about them having issues, but we hadn't confirmed that. So that number could be as low as 77 instead of 87. So that's one thing. And then obviously we're just confirming in some cases, just confirming the information that we have. But that's the new information. I guess as of yesterday, we were made aware of that. If we got access to those units, we potentially could confirm that sooner versus later, but that's.
What's the reason why we haven't had access to those units for the testing purposes?
Okay, let's have maybe chime in here, but what my understanding is that they've just, as we maybe talked about before, some of them have refused access. I thought the refusal of access was to do demo work, but apparently some of the refusal has been just any type of access at all. Robert, can you speak to that? I mean, that's
yes, that's an accurate statement, because the residents refused to give the environmental contractor access to the unit. Then it was assumed that there is moisture behind the walls. We don't know that. But in some cases, as it was stated at the Wednesday meeting, the residents said, well, how do they know that they have moisture? They haven't given me access to it. Or you haven't had access to my unit. Well, what we didn't know is that they weren't providing access. So it was assumed that there is moisture behind the walls. If now they will give us access to the unit, we can do that testing. And then we can determine whether there is an issue or not an issue. If there's not an issue, then they can stay there. But that's what they would need to do. I think they would be cooperative, assuming that they want to stay there and they think there is no issue. We can confirm that with a test.
So I have a question about that, Robert. When the real estate committee met and we were presented with the information that 87 units had moisture, that information then I'm assuming that Capstone gave to us, that was incorrect. So a correct statement would have been 77 units as a result of the moisture mapping have moisture, and 10 units are unknown. Would have been the correct information. Is that right?
Well, correct. Had we have known that at the time, we would have provided that information in that fashion. But the communication between the contractor and not getting access to the unit, they made the assumption, somebody said, okay, all right, so how many units are impacted? You had to make the assumption that those 10 who haven't been tested were.
So we're saying that, so you're telling me that the assumption about moisture was made by the moisture mapping company, or was it made by Capstone?
I'm not sure who made that determination that, well, since we can't give access, that we need to count that as a unit that needs to be vacated.
Right. For me, there's a significant
this is Daly. So the 255 units of 280 are impacted with moisture. So it's very logical to conclude that these 10 units have moisture behind the walls. So, and the fact that these tenants have just refused to give access, and I'll be honest, when the information was presented to me, my team did not tell me about the 10 units. It wasn't until I was talking to SRP about another subject that they enlightened us that there were still 10 units that they're trying to get into.
Okay.
But any of us, I'm going to say myself, if I'm looking at 280 units and 255 of those have been impacted, these 10 units are probably impacted.
Right, but it would have been good to have accurate information because we made a decision to issue termination letters without knowing. And,
Yeah, but
and
these
that's
people
not
still have
okay.
to give a, I mean, part of that is we needed these 10 people to give us access, and
Right, and that
they've
would have
changed
been,
their locks, and they don't answer the phone, and they don't answer their
I
door.
understand that.
mean-
John. I understand that. I understand that. But what I'm telling you is from the board perspective, when we made the decision in the real estate committee to issue 87 termination letters, it was based on the information that all 87 of those units had significant moisture and needed to be vacated for health reasons. And now I'm understanding that for 10 of those units, we did not know that. And so that was not an accurate statement.
Okay.
All right, the point is well taken, Ann, and thank you for bringing that out. And we can address that down the road, but the main thing is, the concern is probably those 10 could have been issued an eviction notice and not the entire 87, but that's okay. We can look at that down the road, and we appreciate your input, Dally and Robert. Also, Robbie, and for your question too, at the meeting Wednesday night, we discovered that some people have already moved out, and they will be moving out on the 1st of August, around that time, and that may be a few of those that we may not have to do anything to. We can just go in and go start the working. So that's where that number is going to be fluctuating. Okay.
Let me ask a legal question here. Then it's to Cliff. Cliff, is as an owner, don't we have right to access the unit?
Yes,
So how,
I mean, for proper purposes, but yes.
I mean, well, this would be a proper purpose. So how
Yeah.
are we being denied access to do what we need to do in order to get this taken care of? I mean, I'm at all here, and how do we get around this? Because we need access to find out if there's something wrong with those units. And I mean, this is handicapping us in making the decisions that we need to make.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess ultimately, I think Baird's on, but ultimately, if a tenant won't voluntarily answer the door or let us have access, we would need to file some type of action to have a court order them to do so, which seems a little heavy-handed just to get access. But if they won't let us in, I don't think we can take self-help measures and force our way in under the lease. So we have the right to go in.
Well, I think that's problematic in this whole thing. Just my thoughts.
So in
Right,
light
I
of, in light of
would
that,
ask,
okay. Sorry.
I just wanted to know if that, I'm assuming that is truly the case. Whose job, Robbie, do you think it was to let us know? I mean, did Capstone, did you tell us that we had tenants who were refusing access? Who did you inform? And you know, what's the standard practice for that?
Well, the standard practice is to do exactly what Cliff said. Now, we've not wanted to do that under the situations that we already have at hand. And I realize, Ann, that you especially didn't like us sending out the letters, but 4 of these people have already reached out to us, and I think we're going to get access now. So while the letters might have seemed harsh under the conditions, they're ultimately leading to what we needed to do, which is to get in and get this work done. So I think just under the nature of these letters in general, it's changing people's minds as to letting us, get in and do the work that needs to be done in their units. And this particular work is to find out whether they can stay in their units and live through whatever construction, might need to go on.
In addition
I-
to
For
that,
the purposes of
I appreciate that
relocation,
thought.
for the purposes
I
of the
think
plan, we are going on the assumption that it's the higher number. So I'm just gonna say that in terms of what we've been discussing with the county in terms of the costs, we're assuming that that is in fact gonna be the case, that it's the higher number.
and we can address this at a later point, but my point also is that the letter and the meeting that we had Wednesday night softened a lot of people. Okay, communication was the most important thing, and that's something we neglected to do initially before sending the letters. But we're, a lot of this stuff is water under the bridge right now. We just got to get over it. So if we can, if there's any other questions with regards to action plan 1. Okay, then Patrick, go to 2.
Okay, so similar to 1, I mean, we understand that we need to provide lodging and temporary lodging. And as I mentioned, we have identified 2 extended stay locations in reasonable proximity, which would also mean that we would store their personal items, assuming that we can't keep any of those on sites or in the units. And then anything associated with that. Now, there are a couple that have took the initiative to store some of their items. It's only in a couple cases. So we'll just work with that. I've been working with, I've additionally identified moving companies that we could probably contract with in order to move the items to storage, in addition to a storage facility to be able to house those, store those items in the interim period. So I did have a meeting with Travis County, made them aware of generally the major components and potentially what the cost may be. And again, they're looking at the sources of funding, but the action plan does assume that we will pay for those costs associated with the temporary relocation, which wasn't something we had specifically said before, only that we need them to move. However, we're saying that we would essentially pay for those temporary relocation places for relocation.
Patrick, this is Eddie.
Yes.
Excuse me. Should we assume then by what you're saying that they're not going to be paying any rent at all until they move back to Oakmont?
That's correct.
Okay, well, I guess we can discuss that, but okay, go ahead.
Okay, that was my summary for action 2. I don't know if anybody had any additional questions. Okay, so
Go to 3.
sure. So this was, I guess this is mainly my sort of putting myself going out on a limb, but there was some questions about rent concessions for the month of July. I know that many of those folks had some portion of those did receive rent concessions. So there was a commitment made by me that there were going to be rent concessions for the month of July for those impacted residents. So that is part of this recommendation for the action plan, is that we extend rent concessions to those for the month of July that are being relocated.
Hey, Patrick, just to remind you guys, we already did rent concessions for June and July, and I would say a third to maybe a half of the 87 impacted were on that list. So it's not maybe as many as some might think here. Just wanted to throw that out there to remind you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate the context. And that was the impetus for some of that was, in fact, that many of those were already receiving concessions. So we're not talking about a substantial, I mean, it is funding and costs, and we will see if in fact we could, I did mention that to Travis County as well. I'm not going to say that that will be included as something that will be refunded to us because of all the other costs that they're obviously covering. But so we're talking about, yes, a portion of those that were already, you know, extended that concession for the month of July.
So it's just in essence making everything palatable for the entire 87 people or
whatever that number is. That's the
yeah, whatever that number is.
Yes, sir.
Is this on top of concessions that we did earlier in the year for March, April?
We did as Dally mentioned, we did concessions for a number of those individuals that were severely impacted for June and July. So this is, correct. So if you may not have received concessions for July because you weren't in the severe category, but now you would if you in fact are part of the 87.
Okay, but didn't we make concessions back in March and April and May as well?
It didn't go back that far. It actually it was only June and July.
Okay.
Yeah. The plan that we did.
It was recommended that we do that, but we did not.
Correct. We didn't go back that far. We went to, it was June and July.
Any other questions? Item 4.
Okay. So this is just about transportation. I talked to Travis County about maybe potentially to have a fleet that they could assist us with, but essentially what they suggested, and when I share this with them, is that, you know, they would help assist in assessing whether that need exists or not and what that looks like. So we're talking about essentially transporting folks to and from the site, if it's school-age children, if they elect to do that. So that one obviously requires more work in terms of assessing the need, how substantial that is, but essentially allowing kids to go to school in the school district and not having to drive from a further location if they elected to do so. That's essentially.
And I've suggested to Patrick, and I've seen it done in the past, that they reach out to the transportation director and the principal and explain the impact of these particular individuals. And sometimes schools and transportation directors will make concessions and pick those kids up from from that particular site. So but it would depend primarily on the comfort level of the parents and having a latchkey kid going into a unit. So there has to be some flexibility there, but that's an option also.
Well, and apparently some of the children are go to a charter school at least, because they gave me a couple of different dates in terms of when school started. So this one would the impact of such, or how substantial this is, maybe one that is a lesser impact, but it is something that was raised as an issue that we wanted to address. Okay.
Questions?
Okay. Okay. Action 5. We talked about this. We believe at least there are about 15 units that ideally we would be able to get immediate access to, not wait for the relocation efforts to commence. Substantial relocation, I guess, efforts, but we want to incentivize residents. Obviously, we understand we have the legal right to access those, but we wanted to see if we could get voluntary compliance by offering, maximum $50 to $100, maybe a gift card, to see if those folks are willing. I understand that there are some that already have offered to do such, so this may be even less in terms of the financial impact, but we wanted to at least see what voluntary efforts we could to garner with offering them some incentive. That's what Action 5 is.
Okay. Questions? Okay, item 6.
Okay, and staff's gonna provide some information on the 6th, but essentially, we want the work to not be interrupted, work that's again still ongoing. So we have a couple possibilities in terms of how we think we should move forward. So I'm gonna actually, Keith, do you want me to bring up that report provides several things. So you want me to share that right now? The operational report, Keith, you there? Keith.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
You're,
The operational report, you want me to share that, or are you just gonna speak?
I just wanted to go over a couple of things really quick and send it out to the board members, if that's all right with you, Patrick.
All right, so why don't you just speak to specifically the funding, and then we can talk about that, I guess, as
Yeah,
well.
well, I'll just go to the critical factors. The
Okay.
rest of it's kind of just data points.
All right. I think I'm gonna go ahead and share it then.
Okay. Good afternoon, commissioners. I appreciate your time this afternoon. One of the things that we want to do after having the meeting on site Wednesday evening was to look at it from kind of an overall standpoint of what are the factors driving us, and not so much on the social services and relocation side, as there's a lot of activity being focused in that area. And as we're doing that, I think that there's a couple of things that we also need to keep in our minds as we approach the August meeting. And I'll just make these points really quick and take any questions that come up from the board or anyone else. Work has effectively stopped at the project, and this will remain the case until the affected residents have been relocated, additional units are open, and vendor payment arrangements have been structured. While a successful relocation is currently the top priority for the residents, the top priority for the property is the continuation of work. It is unlikely that Strategic will receive insurance proceeds anytime in the near future, given TML's rate of progress. And this will require that the SHFC will need to do one of two things. Number one, request authorization from the Strategic Board to make payments to vendors at a much higher level than had previously been requested, and to do so without continuously coming before the board for incremental approvals, or consider executing a loan agreement with the SHFC's claims consultant for an amount to be determined that would allow for payments to continue and crews to continue working until work is completed. This option would accomplish two objectives. The first objective is work would continue uninterrupted without continuing payment authorization requests coming before the HFC board for standard project related expenditures. The second objective is the loan would carry an interest rate of 0%. So there would be no interest charges, and Strategic could pay off the note at the completion of work. The majority of the funds used to retire the debt would hopefully be insurance proceeds received from TML by that time. Number three, a critical step, and this is the last one, a critical step in the relocation process will be that of formalizing the funds flow for utilizing the proposed county funding. The reason that I mentioned this is this step will ensure that county funding can be utilized and internally associated with eligible expenditures. Because normally with any kind of government funds, there are expenditures that are eligible and expenditures that are not eligible, and we will need to be able to split those out. And then as a second part of the document, I included just kind of a 6-step unit restoration process for any board members who are either interested or have not experienced what this type of process is like. And they're just kind of bullet points that go through steps 1 through 6 of how you take a unit from being damaged to being built back and rehabilitated. And that concludes my remarks, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or provide the board members with a copy of the full document.
So the point that needs to be stressed is the need to identify the funding so that, again, work can continue. So if we could just maybe underscore that just again, specifically, Keith, as far as what our options are for payment of the contractors again, because that's part of action. That's action 6 specifically, is to figure out how we move forward with continual work continuing.
Okay. Once again, the first, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I have a question, but I can wait.
All right. The first recommendation, or not recommendation, but scenario that we could proceed under is to request authorization from the strategic board to make payments to vendors at a much higher level than has previously been requested. And what I mean by that is that there would be a higher limit set for us to reimburse any of the vendors on site for work that they have accomplished. And that would reduce the amount of time that would be used needing to come before the board or to call special board meetings or waiting until the following month to get approval in order to take care of those expenses. And they are considerable.
So let me just interject. So Cliff, we didn't believe that this meeting was, the ability to do that was going to be at this meeting. So for us to do that, we would need to theoretically have a special meeting or wait until August the 5th, which there's obviously pros and cons to that. So I just wanted to bring that up, that wasn't fully flushed out as far as the amount, but obviously if we needed board approval, we would need to schedule that.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure what the posting was to approve the relocation plan, and that probably doesn't fit.
No, and it was very general because at the time, well, at least when I heard about the meeting, we didn't have specifics in terms of what we were going to be addressing per se. So that's why it sort of ended up that way.
I do have something real quick. I think it's related to the relocation plan, and there may have been something done that I'm not aware of. But the last communication to these tenants in writing that I know of was the notice where their leases were terminated. I think if we are taking a step back from that, we probably need to communicate to them that the leases are not. It was a unilateral action on our part. I think we can unilaterally pull it back, and that probably ought to be communicated to them, along with if any of them do want to terminate, we'll agree to do that, but we are not unilaterally terminating those leases. Or at least that's what I'm hearing.
Cliff, that was said Wednesday night at the meeting, at the town hall meeting. But I do agree with you that needs to be sent in a formal letter to those 87 people. And we can do that, I think, with today's meeting action. And it'll be a unilateral decision also.
Okay, I just want to make that, I'm not sure what would happen if we get past July 31st and we hadn't communicated anything else, but why leave that open?
Right, I agree with you. And so I think that could be part of today's action, okay?
I would agree with that, except for the tenants that are not allowing us access to their units.
I think, Robbie, I agree with you, but the fact that we sat down and spent 3 hours with them communicating Wednesday, there was a lot softer feelings after they left there at 9 o'clock. There may be one or two, but I hear what you're saying. And of course, if there are some exceptions, we can always make exceptions to the rule. But like Cliff says, I think that we need to make it general for the majority of those individuals. And
well, yeah, and I mean, if there's still a handful that are problematic in terms of not allowing access that you really need, then I wouldn't deliver that notice to them.
You're right.
But it sounds like the vast majority, we're not going to terminate them, and that needs to be put in writing.
Right. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I agree with that. Stepping back on the ones that are being cooperative, but if they're not, then if they're not allowing us access to do what we need to do for the betterment of them as well as the development, then I don't want to back up on the ones that we're issuing those terminations for.
Okay.
So, Ms.
We're
Meyer,
all
are
in
you talking
we're in
about,
agreement.
are you talking about saving and accepting, I guess? Is that what it would be?
Well, we just wouldn't deliver the notice to those.
That's what I'm, that's what I'm saying,
those,
saving and
those handful.
correct.
We don't know. I mean, would it be also possible, do you think, to say that we send out a notice that the leases are not terminated at the July 31st? But then also put in the letter that, we will need access to as per the lease, we have the right to access the units, and that we will, work with them to make that possible, so that they're on notice that their leases are not terminated, but our expectation is that we can get in.
We have to have full access. That's if that's said in the letter properly, then yes, we can do that. And for those that do not give full access, their lease will be automatically terminated on the 31st.
I think yes, but can the letter say the lease is not terminated, and we, per your lease, the landlord has access to the unit and we will be accessing units for the purpose of making repairs.
Well, I don't know if we want to say that, and I think we ought to ask Cliff to draft that letter.
Okay.
He has the gist of what we want to say, and if it's been determined, we can between 9 to 31st. We've got time to talk to people, and if there's 4 or 5 people that's not doing it, we won't deliver them a letter. We'll just deliver them a termination letter. Okay.
Okay, and who's going to be setting the appointments and talking to the 87 residents? Is that something that Capstone is already working on? I mean, who's actively doing that now?
We are already working on that. The team's got a spreadsheet, and we've got numbers and emails and everything, and we're trying to set appointment dates with everybody right now.
Okay, thank you.
We're also currently working on the FAQ. They sent a draft to me kind of late yesterday afternoon. I tidied it up. I think Kelly's trying to put a few polishing touches on it, and then we're hoping to get that over to you all so you can look at it, make sure we all agree, and we can start passing that out so that a lot of those questions that we heard on Wednesday can be answered.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, and I've also asked Robert and Keith to work with Patrick and the rest of the team, especially those people in our office that speak Spanish. So if there are some questions, they can contact directly the office, and they can, if Capstone can't handle it, we can address any issues. And so I think Robert and Keith signed on to that. Did I hear you say yes, sir, Robert and Keith?
You did.
Okay, thank you.
So if I may, if just to make sure we get this covered, I mean, the funding, I don't want to lose track of that. So we just need to understand how we move forward. Contractors do need to get paid, and the option is to obviously to get a line of credit or / borrow the money, or to authorize continued authorization of SHFC funds to do the work. So we just need, so that's action 6. I mean, it obviously is it says consider options. And of course, by virtue of approving the action plan, you would be considering options. But since we're discussing that, we were hoping that we could maybe just get some direction on what is likely going to be the option so that we can plan accordingly.
Right. Can I ask my question now? I understood, Keith, from what you said, that that vendors are going to have to be paid more money than anticipated. And I'm assuming that that's related to all of the disruption around the relocation, and that but did I hear you say that work must wait until the tenants have been relocated? Did you say that, or did I mention it?
Let me kind of go back and that was a lot that I said. So let me kind of replay that and make sure that I'm being clear in my explanation to you. First of all, until we're able to have access to all of the units, we are not going to have a true idea of what the level of expense is going to be in getting them approved. So I'm not in a position, nor does evidently anybody I know, to tell me what the total expense level is going to be yet. However, the purpose of me making that point was to say that since we know that the amount of money that we're going to need to put forth to cover these expenditures until we start getting repaid from our insurance funding, if we were to either increase that limit that staff can approve based on work in place so that we don't have to come back before the board as often, that would help us to keep moving forward and keep the crews on the project and the contractors confident that we weren't going to have another stop and run out of money and then run the risk of losing crews. So a higher expense limit would allow us to continue to pay those bills without having to come back before the board. That's one option. The second option is that we have an opportunity, and it is not spelled out in my update, but we will have an opportunity to borrow the amount of funds needed, at least the majority of the ones that are needed to get through the project, from our consultant. And this is something that they do. They loan it out at 0%. They know they're going to get, they know that as a result of their work, there's going to be a reimbursement from the insurance company at the end. So what would happen is that essentially they would get repaid with the insurance proceeds that come to us as a result of the insurance company paying out. And if we were to operate under that structure, they would just go ahead and make the payments on our behalf, and we would not have to come before the board to ask for permission to put more money toward the project. There wouldn't be a chance of us running out of money and crews walking off before we got approval for additional funds. And everything could go forward on a course that would allow for the most direct and efficient completion of the project without additional money having to come out of our pockets right now.
Who is the consultant, may I ask?
It is
Strategic claims.
Strategic claims.
Okay, all right. Well, let's move on. Then here the third option.
Well, okay, the third item, that there was just those two options.
Okay, those two options. Well, to me, and I can't speak for the entire board, but the latter seems to the most likely, because you don't have 0% interest is very good, and they take they subrogate the claim is basically what you're suggesting.
Okay.
But I do want to raise a question to Cliff as to how can we get the insurance company to move faster, Cliff, with their assessment. They are aware of the damages. It's been 5 months now. So what can we do to push them along and get the money?
Well, I am not an insurance claim lawyer, but I've got one of my partners working with Robert on that. I will get with him and see what we can do to kind of ratchet up the pressure.
Yeah, okay, and that's the first thing, but if I had to recommend anything based on my knowledge of insurance, having been a former agent, I would suggest taking that subrogated claim and giving it to the consultant and ask the lawyer to ratchet up with DML. That would be the best option.
Will do.
Wilmer, could I ask 2 quick questions?
Yes, sir.
The consultants that we hired, Keith, what are they charged with? Are they the kind of consultant that would deal with the insurance company and argue if they felt like it was appropriate, that they're not getting enough money, or is that some other kind of consultant for construction?
Commissioner, that would, board member, that would be a public adjuster. And strategic claims is kind of functioning as in both roles as a consultant, and that they are reviewing these items that we would be claiming, just as a public adjuster would be reviewing them. So go ahead.
When did we hire them? Recently?
I would say within about the last 60 days. I don't know exactly when we brought them on board.
Okay.
If I can provide some background, and someone have to correct me if I'm wrong, we had essentially sought them out to sort of act in that capacity, but were made aware that obviously it needed to be someone that TML authorized / identified. So we essentially kept them on board to sort of assist us through the process, because they had done a lot of work, even prior to us sort of working those things out with TMLs. And so they've been integral in like helping us with some of the estimating and those things. So essentially we've been utilizing them on our behalf, but they're not in official capacity as an adjuster. They're essentially what we're calling consultants.
Okay, my other question was for Cliff. Cliff, you seemed to say earlier that I was hearing the opposite of what you said the other day when we asked about the liability issues. And you're saying that now, even though the letter went out to terminate, that we can safely send out a retraction. Explain to me why that was okay today and not the other day. And I'm not questioning you. I just really don't understand why. I'm just curious what the logic is there.
I'm sorry, Eddie, I don't know that I quite understand the question.
Well, the other, let me try to explain it. The other day we were talking about the liability issue concerning the fact that we had sent out eviction, not really eviction notices, but letters saying that they had 30 days to move or they would be evicted. Basically, I mean, that's not exactly what it said, but in effect. And I think you said today that we can go ahead and retract that and tell everybody that we're not going to force them out, or we're not going to evict them in 30 days. And I know that's not the proper language, but the idea is they don't have to get out in 30 days. The other day I was concerned about the liability on us if we don't ask them to leave, knowing that there could be health issues. And I think I heard you today say that that was okay, that we could go ahead and retract that 30-day notice. I'm just trying to understand what happened between then and now, or if I misunderstood it then or now.
Well, I said that because I guess it's my understanding that we're not going to terminate the leases now, or at least for all of them that are cooperating.
Right.
And if we're not going to terminate the leases,
And
then we
that was
probably ought to retract the, I'm sorry.
Cliff and Eddie, that was a request of, and one of the contingencies for the commissioner's court to help fund this project, okay?
No, I know that, Wilmer. What I'm asking Cliff is about the liability issue for our entity. If we've already sent out the letter saying that they're moving,
Okay,
and
yeah.
we're sending out a letter saying they don't really have to move, can we
I'm
be
sorry, I get it.
liable?
Yeah, I think in that letter, I haven't, I'll draft it over the weekend or Monday morning. But yeah, we need to put something in there to the effect of, even though we are not terminating the leases, we still believe this poses a potential health risk and we advise you that it would be best to vacate the unit as soon as possible to allow us to make the repairs. Or, I mean, that's kind of off the top of my head, but something along those lines to keep them on notice that the health issue hasn't gone away.
Okay.
We just have to be careful, Cliff, with that vacate word. And I know it's not, but you know, they turn words, and maybe put a little explanation in there that says to the fact that in consideration of your vacating, you know, and moving to where we're housing you, then you know how to word it. I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but that's all I'm saying is clarify, because that vacate got us in trouble the last time. You changed the word from vacate to eviction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll try to use a softer word than vacate, but that's the message we need to convey, is that even though we're not terminating the leases for these 85 or so people that are cooperating, we do advise them that the potential health issues still exist, and we would recommend that they do something like vacate, whatever word I can find.
So I think Wilmer's saying you can't say that we're going to throw you out on the street.
I'll try to avoid language like that.
Cliff, is the ownership for Rosemont is strategic, not the housing authority, correct?
Yeah, well, that is correct. It's a LLC that Strategic is the sole member of.
Okay. So the housing authority is the sole member of it, or Strategic is?
Strategic is.
Okay, so the housing authority is not the owner. The Strategic is the owner.
That's correct.
And despite my best efforts, people keep saying the housing authority, even if when we send out multiple correspondence about strategic, but so.
I think we need to make that clear to the commissioner's court. And I understand, you know, I sat and listened to the whole thing the other day, you know, when you were on there, Patrick, and I know we have the same boards on both things, but you know, the housing authorities, you know, portfolio got dragged into this as well as strategics, and you know, I want to make sure that.
Yeah, so I'll let you know that I did bring that to their attention. If you saw the initial agenda, it said housing authority, and I made that clear to the attorney and the chief of staff, and the agenda that was actually revised said strategic. Now, of course, they make a motion and mention the housing authority yet again. And then I asked for the language on the motion. So, I mean,
I know.
The attorneys are aware of that it's strategic, and they made the change because I made it clear that that was who they were. But I don't know. I mean, the media, everyone else, even though we state such, but the county is clear on that, at least the staff.
Yeah. I just want to.
Yeah.
And I have communicated with several folks at the county this week to make clear about strategic ownership and what the relationship is. So hopefully that's starting to be understood.
Well.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, could we, so I know Mr. Roberts spoke about the funding. I just wanted to see if there was any other feedback. If in fact the general consensus is that we would likely utilize a external resource, maybe in the event that we need to continue to fund, you know, the work. Is there any other feeling about that? We obviously could bring it back to the board as well, even in this context in August, to reaffirm what you've all suggested. But in the interim between now and the 5th of August, if there's, you know, other costs beyond the 800,000, I mean, that you all initially authorized, I just wanted to make sure that there was no issue.
Patrick, it's Dally.
Yes.
Would it be helpful for the board? I sat down with another contractor today that, you know, and you and I spoke about this, I think having 2 out there and trying to build it back as fast as possible. So I sat down
Yes.
with that group, and I've obviously sat down with Austin High Tech. So I kind of know what the price per unit average is probably going to be. Does that help if I put that out there? Do you guys want to know that number, or do you want me to leave it?
Well, I don't want to complicate it too much because there may be other things that come in the interim. If the board is okay, I feel like, you know, I mean, unless they want to hear, you know, what you're sharing. I know there's other outstanding issues and we just want to be covered.
Yeah.
Well, just give it, if you don't mind, just give the board an estimate of the cost to restore.
Yeah.
per
And then,
unit. Yeah, that's
Well,
all. You don't have to go into a whole lot of details. Okay.
okay. So right now, our average cost per unit to restore them, I'm just talking about rebuilding them, nothing else, just to rebuild them. Austin High Tech and Infinite Solutions, right at about $10,000 a unit that you know, and that's just the upfront money. That's not the payment once they're complete. So with the 255 affected units that we know, you're looking at about 2.5 million.
But just to be clear, we don't think that we'll be paying all of the 2.5 million. So
And that's understandable, Patrick. Yeah, that just gives you a general cost of, and one of the things, Dally, that we heard from the meeting Wednesday night, as we're all aware, I'm sure the other commissioners did not hear, but the fact that there are a number of problems that we inherited. And of course, when we initially bought those units, we had committed a certain amount of funds to restore them also. So is that money still available, Patrick or Robert?
you're talking about reserves that we've.
No,
I'll let Robert.
we had it, you know, initially when we bought the project, we said we purchased it, and there was an estimate, I think, of $500,000 to do the updated repairs and getting the units returned whole. I'm just trying to find additional money to put over there.
Right, and I would suggest, I mean, we could probably go do a deep dive into this. I mean, that was assuming that we would be turning a profit. I think, to be honest, some of the capital improvements have been probably exceeded maybe what we had anticipated. So that's probably for another discussion in terms of where we are with the funding. But I think we're falling short of obviously having funds to cover all those costs given where we've been.
And I understand that, but the only thing I'm saying is identify that money and move it over to with that 800,000 that we got, and then you may have $1.2 million, $1.3 million. That's all I'm saying.
So that's not available. When we
Correct.
closed the loan, we had a physical needs assessment done. We identified some foundation work that needed to be done in an amount of 600,000 was set aside for that purpose, strictly for that purpose per the indenture. So that those funds can't be moved to another without the consent of the bondholder. What we're trying to understand is we have some $3.5 million in invoices that are currently outstanding. And so that's why we are asking for either an increase of the 800,000 that was previously approved, or have access and borrow the money from the consultant. So that's kind of where we are. It's not future. It's we've got bills right now, and
I hear you, and I understand that.
Good.
Okay, I was just trying to combine the two, but that's fine. We can move on. And I'm clear on it. What about you, Eddie?
Robert, do we have an estimate of what the insurance adjustment is? I know we don't have any anticipation of getting it anytime soon, but do we have an estimate of the insurance adjustment?
As to what they might be willing to provide in a claim to pay us?
Right.
Absolutely not. I mean, they're at the very early stages looking at what was done back in February of March when they fixed the leaks on the pipes. That's how far behind they are. They are not even focusing on what the current work that is being done. So do I think we have a handle on that? Absolutely not.
So is this going to be two separate claims, or are we going to be able to claim this all under the same thing?
Well, so at this point, there certainly is a claim for the freeze damage. There may be some other repairs that they will disallow that they may have said was pre-existing and it wouldn't be counted. But at this point, we don't have a clear understanding of what that is.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Is everybody okay? We have an action item of resolution 2021-10. Is there a motion to approve this plan?
I make a motion that we approve the plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Ann Denton and approved and seconded by Eddie Karam. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed?
Wilmer, may I say something else, please?
Yes, sir, please.
To answer your question, yes, I was clear on everything and I'm fine with everything. And I totally agree with you. If we can get zero interest rate money, we definitely should. The only thing we just agreed to that I'm a little leery of, and maybe it's a good thing to do, maybe it's not, I'm not sure. I guess what my point is, I'm not sure, and I want to ask you all this question. Should we allow the tenants to live for free when we move them to another unit? We're paying to move them and we're taking care of their rent and everything else. And is it smart for us to say to our tenants, you don't have to pay a dime, you're actually going to profit from this storm? It just doesn't.
I don't think we're saying that, Eddie. And if I may answer that, Patrick, I think what we're saying is if those that are moved to like an extended stay and something of that nature, where you're dislocating folks. But if we move them to another unit within the complex or something of that nature, then that's something that they would have to pay. Is that what you're? That's the question.
No, my question is, should we even supplement all of the rent, moving to them an extended stay, as opposed to paying them at or close to what they were paying in our apartment? I don't know. I'm just asking the question. There just seems something wrong about that, because there's going to be other people that were damaged just as much as they were and chose to move out, or, really did the right thing. These are the people that are refusing to go.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they can't go anywhere else, Eddie, but go ahead, John.
John,
Go ahead.
I want to say, I agree with Eddie. I'm not understanding why they're not continuing to pay the proration that they make. It seems like that should still be coming to us. I don't understand why they're not contributing.
Even if it's not the full amount, my question.
Yeah, no, it seems whatever they're contributing now, since we're still providing housing, I guess I really want a little more understanding on why.
Do that.
I didn't hear
We
you.
just voted to do that.
Yeah, I know we did. That's why I'm questioning.
And I'm asking for clarity also.
Okay.
I'm not so adamant about it that I wanted to vote against it.
Yeah, this is, if I may, and I'm going to just take responsibility. There were questions about those things. For the consensus in the decision, there was a commitment made to cover those costs for relocation. And I'm going to tell you the basis for that. I think because when I spoke with the Travis County staff regarding assistance, their feeling was that we needed to make folks whole. Now, that may be a sort of a subjective thing as you talk about how you interpret such, but there was some general feeling that if folks felt like their situation wasn't going to be comparable to where they were, I mean, and that's, we can go as far as we elect to go as far as that's concerned. But it has seemed to me, you know, as in saying that when folks were asking, is that we were not gonna burden them in any way, because even in the extent of an extended stay, I mean, beyond the fact that they have kitchens that they can utilize, in most cases, folks will still be in a 2-bedroom, even if you have 4 members of the family, because the extended stays don't really allow for a reasonable accommodation, but it comes close. So I think this is the kind of a compromise as it relates to that. I mean, in all honesty, as it relates to what they were gonna, what we've been accommodating, how we're accommodating them. I'm gonna say that from my perspective in terms of how I perceived it when I spoke with 2 of the commissioners prior to the meeting, and what folks were asking about in terms of what they were expecting during this relocation period. And I mean, the best we can do is to have them in a unit that's in most cases going to be significantly smaller than where they're living, even if in fact they're saying we're covering those costs. So I'm going to say that was the basis for.
In addition to that, Patrick, for you all that don't know, Commissioner Gomez and Judge Brown went out there last Saturday and met with residents and alluded to a commitment to make them as whole as possible. So I wasn't at that meeting, but that's the gist of the conversation as I heard it. And so that's, I think, another one of the reasons why, and I understand your point, but you know, we're, you know, when you've been ostracized for 16 plus years. I had a lady that said she'd been there 16 years the other night, and I had all these problems and even winded up losing a grandbaby behind it. So there's some realization that sets in. So that's the reason. If you ask me, okay, so that's the reason.
I'm asking everyone's opinion because I just wasn't real sure enough to vote against it.
Yeah. Well, I want to clarify as well. So the county commissioners have, and I'm just making an assumption here by what the write-up said, that they're going to assist in the rental expenses, or, you know, paying wherever, you know, the tenants are relocated to, but yet we're not getting rent. So we're going to go 60 to 90 days without rent in those units. I mean, this is not only are we taking up the expense for the repairs, but that's going to be a tremendous income loss as well. So just.
Yeah, no, that's really my concern. I don't know if it's fair to charge them or not, but.
I mean, normally when you have relocation, tenants are still paying rent of, you know, some sort. But.
Right, this is Anne. If I could make a comment, I have a terrible connection, so I apologize. But I think that the intent of the Commissioners Court is that tenants are relocated and that the Commissioners Court will pay those costs. The Travis County is going to pay those costs. I think to go back in now and talk about charging tenants rent is against what the expectation is of our political leadership, and I advise against it.
And I hear you, Ann, and I appreciate that. But the point I've also make is that you said the Commissioners Court and is going to fund that portion of it, and you know, it's like you're paying twice, and at this point, the insurance company is going to pay at some point. So they had some people there was on Commissioners Court and every place else that was asking for $15,000 in addition to all of this stuff. So, and you heard them, Robbie, and I don't know if you listen, Ed, Eddie, but that was stated in the testimony before the commissioners court. So, you know, we're not going to give anybody $15,000 per unit, you know. They look at the fact that we had $6 million in the bank, one fellow thought, and we're supposed to spend it all on them. But that we have a 4 million population here in the Travis County. So we have to look after all of those people.
So what, we have adopted the action plan, which pays the relocation costs for the residents. Are we rescinding that adoption?
I don't think so. It voted and enacted. We didn't have anyone against it. It was just a clarification that Eddie had. Unless he wants to push it further.
Excuse me, I'm not advocating that we rescind it. That's why I asked the question, because it just doesn't sit well with me, and I understand all the arguments. I just know that the more you give someone, the more they want. It's just human nature. And we've got to cut the spigot off somewhere. And I would just, even if we charged them a fraction of what they were paying, and believe me, I know what a pain in the ass it is to live in extended stay. I lived there when I first moved to Austin. It was horrible. But I don't know. I just don't think it's that wise to give away everything. There are going to be other people that moved out and did the right thing, and they're going to look back and say, well, I got screwed because I got moved out and did what I thought I was supposed to do, and now all those other people are getting free rent.
Yeah, I think there's so many facets to this issue that I think we should just leave it alone. And, you know, and I mean, I hear you, Eddie, and I also understand that argument, but I think given all that every one of us has been through, but primarily the tenants, I think we should leave it as it was intended by the commissioners court.
Okay. If there's nothing else, what's the next item on the agenda?
So that was it. I mean,
that was it.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or any other concerns or any other comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Well, thank you all for participating. And I know this has been a trying time for each one of us. And I want to commend the staff, that Robert and Keith for showing up the other night, and commend Patrick and Dally for taking the questions and addressing, and Dally making the notes. And we really appreciate everything that you all are doing, and we appreciate your cooperation. And thanks again for working with us through this crisis. We're going to get through it. Okay.
Yes, sir.